What up, guys? It's Jill. It is March 16th. Been a crazy, energetic day, right? It was warm this morning and now it's freezing and blizzarding. Um, so I think that the energy is right for this video. I have been attempting to make this video for the past 2 months. In early February, there were some things that took place. I made a quick video, said I was going to make a video that week, and then Spirit was like, nope, not yet, not yet. So I have about 5 pages of notes that I would like to get through. So, first things first, I have been attending um, political meetings lately, and for both sides, okay, because I think that the one thing that we're missing is our humanity, right? And I see a lot of people name calling and finger pointing, and that, of course, is by design. But I will say this very clearly: it is to our own detriment, and it is of our own ignorance. Okay, being divided the way that we are by race, by gender, by all of these false constructs are going to be our demise, especially those of us who are living in that, lower middle class, even maybe upper middle class at this point. Seeing that Logan Paul is being advocated for as a Republican nominee is terrifying. If you really want to look at an oligarchy, this dude has no political affiliation. He made his millions from basically feeding us poison, okay, because that's what his product is. And I made a video on that when it first came out, and he was largely supported by a local millionaire. And it just, that trail, right, those grapevines are not good. They're very strong, but they're not maybe healthy. And a lot of people saw through that, and one of those establishments that saw through that was our own Syracuse University. So I implore you to really think about the direction that we are headed and what it could mean for tyranny and dictatorship. Now, let's start here. All lives matter. This is a universal truth. All lives matter. We are all here of the same creator. We are living, we are breathing, and we bleed red. Okay, no matter where we come from, no matter what country we live in. This is a universal truth. We all matter. Now, that said, there is a state assembly bill. Actually, there's a Senate assembly bill and then one in the state assembly for New York State that currently says it's an environmental protection bill. It's basically a moratorium on AI data centers. There are huge data centers attempting to come to our area. A really large one, I believe, is called Stamp, and that one is moving through Buffalo, New York right now. And they are asking for like $1 billion in tax breaks, friends, to create maybe 100 jobs, 120 jobs, and a lot of those jobs will probably be remote, which means they will be from out of state. This is important. It's also important because the water that they're going to use is upwards of 1 million gallons a day of our fresh water. This is not okay. New York State is bright with fresh water. We cannot allow our government to destroy our water for AI. And I need you to be understanding the dangers of AI. Now, I was told the other day that there is new research stating that people between like 16 and 25 are stepping away from AI because they're understanding the detriment to their creativity and their intellect. So, small miracles, okay? But we cannot give big corporations our resources because our duty is to protect the earth, but for our safety, right? We need fresh water to survive. We need air to breathe, clean air to breathe. And we need intellect and thought process. I have seen so many things on the internet lately that are blatantly false. Pictures that don't match the stories that are completely absurd. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't seem to be understanding that these are AI generated, that these are not real life things. That's a dangerous place to be. Okay, so if you would like to know more, or I implore you, call your representatives. The name of the bill, actually, I don't have the name of the bill. I asked for it in the meeting that I was in, and when I looked it up, it just says S9144. So, S9144, and this is Moratorium Environmental Protection. Can you read that? Not really. And then it also has an assembly bill in New York, which is A 10141. Okay, and it asks for 3 years. Okay, 3 years for us to study what the environmental impact would be, how safe the water would be, what contaminants would be discharged by these data centers back into the water, what happens to the wastewater, can these data centers use wastewater rather than our fresh water? Part of the reason that we're having such a hard time standing against these data centers is that they are part of the electrical grid build out. And I have talked about this many, many times. The electrical grid build out is necessary for 5G surveillance. It is also necessary for the rollout of blockchain digital currency. And this one is hard because it's dangerous to our daily life. It's dangerous to the lower class because if you don't have money to pay your bills and you don't receive some kind of supplemental government program for food, you may not be able to purchase groceries or to purchase a birthday cake for your child because you will not be able to decide where your money goes. Your money will go to your bills, and those bills will be owned by the government. Now we see this in the Republic of China. Cell phone lines are actually owned by the government. Okay, I believe utilities are owned by the government. Don't quote me on that. Somebody can look that up, please. So when all of those things are owned by the government, they will go into your money and they will take what they need for those bills, and you will not have like a due date. You will just, it will come out when it's supposed to come out. There will be no grace period. Okay, there will be no, oh, I'm going to let this slide until next week. That's not going to be something that's going to go away, friends, under a system like that. And that is part of the 2030 agenda. And that is also why we are in Iran. It's why we are in Venezuela, okay? Because these are countries that had oil, and oil gave them independence. These countries are not under a Rothschild banking system. Guess what? They're going to be now, okay? We are in very, very dangerous times, and we need to politicize, but we need to come together in our humanity and understand that when we're fighting about ignorant things like race and what gender people want to be and coming up with new genders, what the hell is an orchid? Okay, friends, like at this point, there's a fine line between insanity and intellect, and we are walking it. But if we don't start to come back to some semblance of sanity and identify as fully human, okay, that's all you need. I'm human, I'm here, I bleed, I can speak no matter what language it is, okay? Please understand that we are going to fall victim to this new world order. And there are two ways that this can go. We can seek balance between the control and the oil and the green energy and find ways that it works together, or we can let ourselves drown. And what I'm seeing right now, the ship is sinking, friends. Okay? There is no one coming to rescue us. America is independence. We are freedom. We are a democratic society. Now, are we rooted in anything safe or healthy? No. Did we allow slavery? Yes. Is that how we built this country? Yes. I'm not negating any of that. I'm not saying that we weren't awful humans, but we have a choice to turn the page. Okay? If you want a quick little lesson, John 3:16 says that God loved us, right? And he gave his son and basically sacrificed him for the sins of humans because he knew that humans were vile. We're not good people. Okay? If you were to look to the Quran and look up 3:16, it tells us, we have believed in you, so please forgive us for our sins. That's the humans asking God, like, look, we followed you and we're believing in you, so please help us, right? And if you go back further than that, about 3,000 years into the Gita, 3:16 says that there is a karmic wheel, and that if we do what we're supposed to do and we help others, then our life will be, prosperous. But if we look to things that are just sins of the flesh or greed, then, nobody's going to prosper. So it's like across the board, okay, that this day is significant. This day, it's time. We have to awaken to the truth. And there is a huge awakening happening on the planet right now. It's gigantic, okay? And people are starting to understand, but it's been a slow process, and that's unfortunate because we just have to start paying attention. I've been talking to a lot of people lately, and more so because I did this crazy thing and I went to this online dating site, right? But, I've been single for like 10 years. I've been celibate for 6. I was like, oh, let's give this dating thing a whirl. And what I didn't account for was the level of just scattered thought, I guess, where people aren't paying attention to things like the environment or gas prices. There's a lot to be said for privilege. If you are privileged enough to not be touched by the things that are moving around us, hooray. But please understand that when 60%, the majority of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck and going without health insurance, this is not okay, friends. This is not okay. And there's no reason for it. When Elon Musk is sitting on like $800 billion, there's no reason for anyone to be going hungry. We overproduce and overconsume every single day as a global collective. And yet here we are. Not only fighting for scraps of resources, but paying exponentially. Okay, this is why your NICEC bill is high. And we've had this conversation before. Because we are the ones that are paying for this build out of the new electrical system. And this electrical grid system is necessary for them to cage us. We are building our own prison. And if you want to talk about prisons, let's talk about, $50 billion in immigrant prisons. That's profit from immigration detention, friends. Big Beautiful gave them $150 billion. And they will make $50 billion profit this year in immigrant detention. Do you know what the profit is for New York State prisons? Somebody look it up, because we are a for-profit prison system. And the other day, I was at this political meeting, and someone said, well, why are we housing immigrants in our jail? Because there's money in it, friends. And then someone else said, well, are we going to get the new sheriff to stand up and say we won't work with ICE? That doesn't really work, okay? And let me tell you why that doesn't work. Because there are fiscal consequences. Unless every sheriff in New York State were to stand up and say, hey, we're not going to cooperate, what authority do you really think the sheriff has to look at the federal government and say, sorry, I'm not going to help you, without the state and the government coming down on them? Do you know how reliant we are upon government grant funding? Look at your daycare centers. Look at your Head Start programs, friends. It's all government money. Are you sure that's a game you want to play? Because they're already taking that money away. It's a big game, friends, and this is why you have to be involved. It's why you have to understand where the money comes from and where the money goes. It's why you have to understand how dangerous it is that they want to start rationing our electricity. So let's go to the next Senate bill. Actually, this one I think is just a state bill. This one is New York State, and it is an Assembly Bill 4615. So A 4615. Now this one is terrifying. I talked about this one, I think 2 years ago, when it was brought to my attention that it was being written. So in 2023, this bill was introduced, and it is to regulate outdoor night sky. Now, it's being passed off as an environmental conservation bill that would focus lighting downwards towards the ground rather than like up around big buildings. So think banks, people with LED lights, because we know that this light pollution is causing harm to the environment. However, there's a caveat. They are also writing in that after a certain amount of, like a certain daytime, say 11 p.m., it's going to be lights out. And I had talked about this, and everyone told me that I had lost my marbles, but here it is. In 2024, it was moved to the EPA, and in 2026, it has now been sent to codes to be like redirected. Okay, so this one is moving, and for 3 years it's been moving. So it's one to keep an eye on, because just last week, I think, or 2 weeks ago, maybe locally, we had the Fire and Ice Festival, right? Now imagine if it was lights out at 11 o'clock, you're at a venue, and then all of a sudden, oh, we can't have a party anymore because our electricity has been limited by the grid. Okay. Lights out, friends. Everybody's going to bed. Now, obviously, places like hospitals, factories where there are a third shift, that would be a different story. But imagine being in your home and told that you can only have X number of lights on. This is coming, friends. This is the amount of control that they want to have. By 2030, the 2030 agenda is very, very real. It's very real. And you've seen it, okay? You've seen it play out. You're seeing the villainization of women. Why? Because women are starting to stand up. Women like me are waking up and speaking our truth, and we're taking back birthing rooms. We're taking back our sovereignty. We're taking back our children by not filling them with poisons and petroleum-based medicines. Okay. The rollout of biometric data. Why do they need 5G? Why do they need all these upgraded cameras? Why do they need your AI profile picture? It is terrifying to me. Or just in general, how many people didn't understand a couple of weeks ago when the AI pictures were going around and everybody was going, oh, look, this is so cool. It knows what I'm doing, and it knows what I do, and it knows my hobbies, and it knows where I work, and it made a picture of me. Friends, do you really want to hand all that information to technology so they know where you are every second of the day so that nothing that you do is sacred? Are you sure? Are you sure? How about your kids? How about your kids? They keep you engaged to keep you disengaged from all the things that are moving around you. There are 73,000 people in ICE detention centers in the United States right now. We could use that money for housing and food. We could use those spaces for housing, right? We could, create apartments and house people. Instead, we just put them in cells. They didn't come here legally. Well, when the president says you can pay $5 million and have, you know, you can come here for $5 million and we'll just give you residency. You can do whatever you want, right? But if you don't have $5 million and your country's at war and your kids are probably going to starve or get shot in the street, well, screw you. We'll throw you in a detention center. And if the goal is to keep families together, then why are we putting the children in separate prisons? And if the goal is to deport, then why are we caging and housing all these people? For profit, friends, for profit prisons. Okay? It's a real thing. The video games are a problem. The video games are a problem when they're 2. They're a problem when they're 10. They're a problem when they're 34. If you're sitting at home playing video games, especially first-person shooter games, and not understanding that this is not real life, or not paying attention to the things that are going on in real life, we have a problem. Especially with young children. Video games, they create a false reality that human life can never replicate. Okay, and that's why a lot of kids nowadays, they don't have any spatial awareness. They don't have muscle memory. They're not able to hold the pen and write, but they can manipulate the Minecraft. It's a problem. We need balance. Video games are not a babysitter. YouTube videos, again, the refresh rate. Okay, if you have a kid that's already on the spectrum and you're constantly handing them videos, especially ones that aren't educational, you're not doing them any kind of service. Again, intentional. Okay, these are things that are distractions. That's why TV was called the boob tube, right? I'm 24 minutes deep in this. I'm trying my best to get through. Like I said, I have 5 pages of notes here. But it basically comes down to, we have to dismantle the patriarchy, and it means not living in fear. And fear is a big thing. Everybody's got a Ring camera, everybody's got their whole house under surveillance. There was a time when we didn't live in fear of the dark, and there was a time when we didn't have to live in fear of one another, okay? Because fear creates chaos, and it creates anger, and it creates animosity. You can't drive out hate, friends. It doesn't work that way. The 2030 plot is sustainable goals. That's what it was rolled out as. But when you look at, like, you and me not being able to have private cars, not having shipping and trade with other countries, not having travel unless, you can afford, like, private jets. Okay, we're talking, look at TSA right now. TSA and ICE, this is a big one. I hope that you have stayed with me this long, actually, because TSA and ICE are not being separated right now. And there's a reason for that, and it is for the political ploy. Because if they can shut down air traffic, you're not going anywhere. But they also want to give ICE free reign, so guess what? Now you got to give us what we want, and that's exactly where we're at. The SAVE Act, okay, know what it is? Know what it is. There are a couple of tips here, okay? Be in service to one another, please. Like, be volunteering, be helping out, be showing up, get involved politically. Now, I'm not saying you have to show up to a No Kings rally, but if there's a local meeting going on where people are discussing ideas and people are coming together in their humanity, if people are looking to feed and house people, please show up. Please be helping one another. Apologize to one another, okay? Especially if you catch, like, hate speech, or if you're driving and you catch yourself being, like, angry and saying things that are, out of character, or cursing at other people. If your children are in the car, apologize. Even if your kids aren't, apologize, okay? That's actually a form of prayer. If you're like, hey, you stupid, okay, I apologize. Maybe that person wasn't paying attention. Maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe, their kid was distracting them. These things happen, okay? So we have to start allowing for our humanity if we're going to unite in our humanity. Um, but protecting our basic rights, our freedom, our water, the air that we breathe. These things are important. And when you look at what happened in February, Trump was basically like, well, humans aren't causing global warming, so we're just going to drill and we're going to mine and we're going to do what we want to do. And it's going to be detrimental, friends, and it's going to happen very fast. There is no plan B, okay? We're not all going to Mars. All right. Yeah, so I guess that's it, you know. That's it, guys. The money that we have spent on this Iranian war, we could have had an international rail system. That's a real thing. That budget was there, and that is how much money we have spent on this war in Iran. But it's been on the list since what, 2001? There were 9 countries that we needed to take, and I think there's only one left. So, getting very close to 2030 and the sustainable goals. We're certainly coming under biometric surveillance. That is, dang it. Okay. Biologics is a new one to look out for. Certain medicines and vaccines are going to start being marketed as biologics, and you need to be aware of that, because when you are signing consent forms for yourself and for your children, that is the buzzword that you want to be looking out for, because you do not want to consent to those things, because they will start injecting you with those things. Okay, this is not a time to not be paying attention, and unfortunately it's not a time to be ignorant. And by design, we've bred a couple generations right in that direction. And then we named all the children. So, alright, I guess, guys, today that's all I got. I think I covered everything that I want to. Just remember that you are a sovereign being. That means that you are always in control of you. You are in control of what goes into your body. You are in control of the things that you see, the things that you think, the things that you ingest, things that you consume. Okay? And I know it's a lot to hold, especially if you are trying to hold a job, especially if you are struggling, especially if you have kids. But in any realm that you can be paying attention, please be paying attention. All right. Love you guys. I will see you later. Have a good night. Talk to you soon.